Good morning. Welcome to Great Tree Zen Temple. Our speaker this morning is Seido, and he will be joining us shortly. But first, we will have an opening sutra. An unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect Dharma is rarely met with, even in 100,000 kapas, having it to see and listen to, remember and accept. I vow to taste the truth of the Tathagata's teaching. And if you hear banging in the background, we have an attack by the woodpeckers this morning. Next, brief statement about Dharma. In Buddhism, when Zen practitioners share their understanding of the teachings and practice, it is offered freely as a practice of Dana Paramita. Dana is a Pali word that means generosity or to give freely, and this practice is done without expectation of getting something in return. This is the spirit of speaking about the Dharma. Other ways to practice Dana is to offer support to those who share the teachings, to support places of spiritual practice, and to give without judgment or expectation when opportunity arises. Those who share the teachings at Great Tree do so on a Dana basis. Please support their practice by giving what you can. You can either do this directly or through Great Tree, or Seido, how would you like Dana to be delivered?
I'm just going to ask that all Dana be directed to Great Tree.
All right. Then go to greattreetemple.org and follow the donate path. Our speaker this morning, Seido Don Wilkerson, practices with the Charlotte Zen Meditation Society, where he has practiced for many years and now leads the practice. He was ordained a lay teacher by the abbess of Great Tree Zen Temple, Rev Teijo Munnich, and he has been a great friend of us, and we of him, and have been connected at the hip for a long time, his organization and ours. And we welcome you this morning, Seido, and turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me start by asking, can everyone hear me okay? Okay, I'm going to assume everyone can hear okay, and just let me know if you can't. And please feel free to interrupt me at any time during the Dharma discussion if you have a comment or have a question and you don't want to wait to the discussion time. That's fine with me. The subject of my Dharma talk today is the role of intention in the practicing of the precepts. So I decided to talk about the precepts on this occasion because we have a precept ceremony coming up very soon. I know everyone's been reading and talking about the precepts. So I just chose the topic of intention to talk about. It's something I've heard a few talks on over the years, and I've also read about it in some of the books. So the very first thing I'll do is talk about a couple of the sources of inspiration for me. One of them is Living by Vow. Living by Vow, A Practical Introduction to 8 Essential Zen Chants and Texts by Shohaku Hakamura. It's an excellent book on the precepts and practice. Another book is Entering the Mind of Buddha, Zen and the 6 Heroic Practices of Bodhisattvas by Reb Anderson. And also, I don't have a copy of it, but Reb Anderson's other book, Being Upright. All 3 excellent books on the precepts. And I'm not going to quote a lot of things out of those books because I'm probably just going to talk off the top of my head about the precepts and about intention. But those are three excellent books. If you haven't read them and you want to learn more about the precepts, I would encourage you to read those books. I started, let's see, I have just a few notes laying here for me. I started out, I went online and looked up a very basic, simple, straightforward definition of the word intention because I wanted something secular, kind of right off the internet of what the word intention means, and then we could sort of go from there. And one definition I found says, an intention is the idea that you plan. Let's see, I can't even read my own writing. That you plan to carry out your goal, purpose, or idea, and that is your intention. It's something that you have a plan to do. And of course, you know, that's not from a spiritual source or a religious practice or anything, so it's very simple and straightforward. But the first thing that happened was I started just opening these books and looking, and I found a couple of things. Of course, they talk about intention in a number of different places. But I am going to read one little paragraph here as a quote. This actually comes, according to this, from the Prajnaparamita Sutra in 8,000 lines, and its verse summary. And this is from Entering the Mind of Buddha. And this is a quote. Bring forth as much as you can of love, of respect, and of faith. Remove the obstructing defilements and clear away all your taints. Listen to the perfect wisdom of the gentle Buddhas, taught for the weal of the world, for heroic spirits intended. And I thought that was kind of an interesting contrast to a rather secular term of intention. You know, it struck me that the internet definition of intention strictly keeps itself just to the individual. It doesn't mention others at all. You know, you have a goal to carry out. You have an intention. You have a plan. You have an intention. The Buddhist definition there that I just read immediately mentions others and the importance of practicing not in a vacuum of yourself, but practicing in the Dharma world of Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. And of course, you would expect that of any spiritual tradition is going to emphasize the role of others in our lives. But I thought when we talk about the precepts, it's very important to understand that they only have a context with regards to other beings, whether it's people in our immediate life or people we practice around in our Sangha or just in our daily life, and then, of course, all sentient beings. So, you know, I read the brief summaries that they offer of the 16 Bodhisattva precepts and the so-called 10 prohibitory precepts. And of course, it stood out in every single one of them. Everything to do with the precepts is always something to do with self and others. It's not just self. It's not just something that as a practitioner you are asked to do or expected to do, but it's something you are encouraged to do relative to other beings. It's something to do with your relationship to other beings. And that's true of every single one of the precepts. Um, most obviously with the precept of to save all sentient beings. It's very much looking outward. When we vow to save all beings, there's no mention of the self. It's just a vow to save all other beings, all beings. So that's where, as far as I'm concerned, everything starts from, with this idea of intending to follow the precepts. It also struck me that, intention is a plan to follow out or carry out some idea we have, some purpose, some goal. So when we look at our own practice and our own life, we ask, well, what is the goal? What is the plan? And that can be very subtle sometimes in Zen practice, but I think that's what the precepts are there for. I think these offer the suggestions of how to stay on track and not to be too distracted from what's going to happen every day. If we're always distracted from everything that comes up. But always come back to that original intention of saving all beings and sort of leaving out self, I think is very important in intention. And so over the last couple of days, I've been thinking about intention and what it is and how it kind of operates in our lives. And I think it's an ongoing thing that you have to practice in order to have intention, and you have to have intention in order to practice. And each one continually reinforces the other. I think you can have the intention to practice and never practice. There's so many distractions in life. And I think you can start practicing, and if you don't clarify your intentions as you go along continuously, every day, if you don't sort of return to that idea of intention, you'll sort of wear yourself down. You'll get tired, you'll get distracted. So I think coming back to the practice and coming back to intention is always important. I think in our practice, people can express their own intention individually. You don't always have to follow the intention of someone else's expression. But I think the Bodhisattva precepts are so pure, so well thought out. That's always a good place to start. And if you find yourself struggling to figure out what your intention is, if you return to those original precepts, that's probably one of the best sources you're going to find. Simply to want to have the desire to save all beings. And of course, it gets, like everything in life, it gets very messy and complicated because life comes up with challenges that you're not expecting, you haven't planned for, of course. They just come up at you. I think when you practice daily and you keep returning to your own intention and using the precepts as a guide, they will help you. I had the experience come up this week, actually, that was, totally unexpected. Someone at my workplace started developing some mental issues, emotional issues, however you want to describe it. And she came to me early in the week, actually. And so we left the building and kind of went aside, and, I talked with her for a little while, tried to reassure her and calm her down a little bit. This was fairly early in the morning, early this week. So she asked me to have the rest of the day off, which I gave her. I told her not to be concerned about that. So she expressed a desire to want to be under somebody's care, because I had suggested that she just go home, take the day off, rest and relax, and just unwind and let go of some things and see how that worked. So she left. She came back the next day, still having quite a bit of emotional turmoil, and she asked me about getting some help. And I realized her parents were out of town. She had some friends she was in contact with. So I encouraged her to just seek out some professional help. I asked her to call her parents and also call her doctor, which she did eventually. So I lost touch with her after that for a day or so, but towards the end of the week, she did get in touch with me and tell me that she was under professional care. So as of this weekend, as far as I know, she's under someone's care, and I'm relieved about that. But I bring all this up just to sort of talk about the way the precepts come up in your life. I wasn't expecting to sort of counsel anybody because I'm not a professional and that's not my forte. But I found myself, she was coming to me. She said she valued my judgment, and she was asking me what to do and asking for help. I didn't think about the precepts directly, but I know I was influenced by them. So I was careful to try and keep her situation as quiet and private as I could between us. I encouraged her to do the things that I thought would help her, to not come to work, to take some time off, to stay at home, to sort of settle down, just sort of let go of some of the things she was clinging to so tightly. And then I told her to go ahead and call her doctor, call her parents, get in touch with a professional, which she did. My intention, I wasn't so clear about, I wasn't thinking a lot about it, but obviously my intention was to help other beings, And my intention was to go ahead and help, even though I didn't feel like I was a professional at it or that I had the best advice, but just to help in any way that I could. Then I turned to my coworkers because they, of course, wanted to know. When I approached them, they said, "Oh, yes, she's already been to us and told us exactly what's going on." So they already knew at least as much as I did or more. But I felt a responsibility of trying to both help somebody and at the same time protect their privacy and, protect their situation. So and it's at the workplace, which I know has even other levels of responsibility. But I just went ahead with my own personal sense of responsibility. I put that ahead of everything. I thought, okay, I'm not going to worry about crossing T's and dotting I's. I'm just going to offer what little help I have and go forward from there. But I bring all that up just because we live every day, we practice every day, we anticipate some things, but life brings us a lot of things we're not expecting. If you have your practice to fall back on, and if you have the precepts to fall back on, they give you some foundation to work from. Whether you work, really, really efficiently from them or not, it's still, they're there. They give you some opportunity. All of this, of course, led me to thinking about the source of intention, because I was in the midst of suffering and so was somebody else. She was in in quite a bit more suffering than I was. But I started thinking about it, and obviously suffering is one of those things I think we would all agree does help to sharpen your sense of intention. And we suffer pretty much every day on one level or another, to one degree or another. I think every single day we realize the truth of the Buddha's basic teachings, which is that life is somehow not completely satisfactory, at least the way we're experiencing it, the way we are relating to it. We're not completely satisfied. We're always wanting to not suffer. We're wanting to be free of all that. But yet, for most of us, because we don't see things so clearly, we suffer. So I thought, well, our intention is sharpened by our suffering. It's like a cycle. You come back to your intention because you're suffering, and you realize, okay, well, maybe if I practice a little more clearly, I'll suffer a little less. Maybe the people around me will suffer a little less, and I can help them if I can clarify their own intentions. And I guess I'm trying to bring intention into this more into focus, because I think when we go back to that original definition of intention, it's a plan, or maybe a motivation in some ways to carry out a plan. But if you don't execute the plan, then you really are not going to benefit from what your intention was. Intentions can be clear, they can be helpful, but you have to actually put them into place and exercise them, and in our case, practice, or else an intention really is not, so to speak, bearing fruit. I think maybe I can find one other quotation here I was thinking about. Let's see, this is also from Entering the Mind of Buddha by Rev Anderson. And this is really kind of a summary. It's very near the beginning of the book. It's a summary of his whole book and what he's talking about. And this is about two paragraphs here. And he asked, do you sense a wish for Buddhahood? And he says, and I'm quoting, in a sense, this whole story from seed to fruit describes an aspirational process. Many people wish to help others, but they have not yet discovered the aspiration to realize Buddhahood for that purpose. If we look into our hearts and minds and discover the aspiration to help beings, and we take care of that wish, it may eventually grow into the aspiration to realize Buddhahood. Is there a wish for the welfare of beings in your heart? Do you sense a wish for Buddhahood? And in the next paragraph, he says, as we continue on our path, we will awaken to the reality that our entire life and practice is not something that we do alone. We understand that our practice is a gift to us from all beings, and a gift that we will give to all beings. This is the ultimate truth of our life. Perfect wisdom is the thorough understanding of this generosity, a state wherein we meet the Buddha teaching the Dharma face to face. So I think, that's just a great summary of his book, but it's also a summary of what I'm trying to say about intention. Intention really doesn't exist or has no value if it doesn't go beyond intention. It has to go into practice. And like I said earlier, I think it's a revolving cycle. I think the more you practice, the more it helps clarify your intention. And the more you clarify your intention, the better it helps you to practice, to stay in your practice. It's a revolving cycle, I guess. I think the role of suffering in it is quite dynamic for most of us. For most of us, like I consider myself to be someone who's still suffering a good bit and still hasn't clearly seen the cause of my suffering. I think suffering helps to clarify your intentions. If your practice is on a higher level, you probably suffer less, but that's probably because you've clarified your intentions better. So it is a constantly evolving process. When we sit down to do zazen and when we practice just in our daily life every day, we're not always consciously aware of what our intention is unless we make an extra effort. I think we're aware of it kind of in the background of our life. We know that we feel compassion for other beings. You know, it happens every day. I mean, we read news articles, we see things going on, and we're moved to be very compassionate because of all the suffering we see. But when we sit down and we practice, we need to clarify those intentions and continue to build on them. I guess what I'm saying is the intention has to go beyond that state of intention to the state of, action. Having that plan, knowing that you're going to sit down every day, that you're going to practice your compassion towards other beings, and that when you get off the cushion, whatever kind of day you have, because, like I said, it can run the gamut from one extreme to the other. You never know what life, what challenges life is going to throw at you. I think returning to your practice, allowing yourself to be empty, let go of all those things you're holding on to, grows the compassion, and the compassion grows the intention, and it just goes in a cycle. With that, I just can't think of much else I want to say. Before I open it up for questions and discussion, I just want to say about the dana, I really appreciate people's generosity, and I would really like it if they would direct all that dana towards Great Tree. I don't have any financial need that I would express for myself, so I would just appreciate dana being directed towards Great Tree. And so with that, I just want to open it up to everyone. You can ask questions or make comments. Anything you feel like expressing will be appreciated. Thank you very much.
I've got a question, comment, idea. So recently, I had been like kind of white knuckling through this for a really long time. My roommate also had mental issues, and it finally got to the point where she trashed the apartment, she trashed everything. Um, and so I left. But you defined the difference between you and others. Is there a point when you think intention for others goes too far? And any thoughts in that area?
Okay, thank you for that. Well, I definitely don't want to pose myself as an expert, but I guess my my reflection on that would be that, of course, when you practice Zen deeply, you have compassion for all beings, and it should be just unlimited. Now, that may sound a little bit idealistic, but I think the more you understand, the more you open yourself up, the more you realize there is no separation between you and other. Now, that's still, I'm being honest, that's a very idealistic way to perceive life. And I get your comment. It's not always maybe really practical. I think, and this is just me, but I think we are called upon in life to protect ourselves and defend ourselves, so to speak. I just mean protect ourselves, because you can't practice, you can't have compassion, you can't do anything unless you find some place in your life where you can be solid and consistent. And that's not being selfish. You know, this kind of question comes up sometimes when people look at the lives of monks and say, well, you know, they're selfish. They're going off to a monastery. They're practicing under these, some people think, you know, idealistic situations where they're protected. And here we are out in the quote unquote real world struggling. Well, that's not true. That's not the way to look at it. You take care of yourself and you practice in the environment that you have. And if creating an environment where you can be solid and strong helps other people to be solid and strong, I think is not selfish. It's actually a good idea. So I don't know if that helps, but I think what I'm trying to say is don't feel bad or selfish if you have to sort of take care of your life and your own practice in order to be able to help other people. You know, you can't be compassionate towards other beings if you're caught up in such turmoil that you can't see things clearly. So does anyone else have any ideas or want to express anything?
Um, I started back in the late 60s in that crazy San Francisco period at the Zen Center there. And I wasn't there, but 68, 69. And then in one of the Wind Bells, which is a publication for the San Francisco Zen Center, uh, they were all sitting in a large room, probably about 40 or 50 people listening to Shunryu Suzuki, the Zen master there. And a fellow named John sort of shouted out, "We're all sitting here facing the wall, and we need to be down in Golden Gate Park demonstrating against this god-awful war." And and Suzuki got down and he had his little Kiyosaku, yeah, watch out. And and he was hitting the guy on the shoulders, saying, "You can't even tie your shoes. What do you think you're going to be able to do down there in Golden Gate Park demonstrating?" And of course, everybody was really shocked that a Zen master would suddenly explode. But it was certainly a lesson that he drove home that we have to be careful with. And Uchiyama brings this out in his book, Deepest Practice, Deepest Wisdom, about having an intention to be helpful, which is not a bad thing, but let me go to another story. Sorry, I'm 80 years old. There was a monastery in Brazil. Don't get old, anybody, please. There is a way. Okay, that's why we're here. Don't identify with old age. There's something else. Anyway, so there was a Catholic monastery in Brazil, and it was in the midst of a poor area. And there was lots of famine, shortness of this and that. And the monks, being very caring monks, wanted to be helpful. But they had a rather long contemplative prayer time. So a 24-hour day is still a 24-hour day. So they said, let's cut down on the prayer time and we can be more available to the suffering of the poor. So they did that, and then they made another decision. Let's cut down a little more and we can really get in there and really be available to them. And so they did that, and then they made another decision. So my hands are indicating the shrinking of stillness and silence. And the monastery, within 2 years of having made that initial decision, closed. And this was a story told by B.D. Griffin, who is a wonderful 20th century contemplative Christian. And he said, well, it becomes obvious what the problem was. And of course, in his language, he says, if you lose the mind of Christ, you're lost. So you have to balance that contemplative time with the intention to also be helpful. And when they closed down the getting in touch with the deeper self, then they became very confused. And I think that's exactly what Shunryu Suzuki was saying to John at the Zen Center. If you go down there and join all that ruckus and your mind is confused, what are you going to add? More confusion. All right, I'll follow up with the question. Where would that confusion be coming from of sitting less and more activation? In other words, more participation in Golden Gate part, demonstration or helping the poor. Where would that confusion, in a general sense, where would that confusion be coming from?
Well, I don't know, you're probably asking everyone, but I think confusion is around us every day, all the time. It's just life. It's the Four Noble Truths in action. You know, we perceive life to be unsatisfactory because there's so many options, so many choices, so much going on in life. And we're distracted by that. We feel like it's not satisfying, but the only way you're going to find, the only way you're not going to be distracted is when you do sit down, get very quiet and still, whether it's in a Buddhist sense or a Christian contemplative sense. When you stop all the chaos and get still enough and quiet enough to actually pay attention to what you are all about. I'm putting that in very non-spiritual terms, but and that's where, whether you try to or not, you're going to find your intention, because you're either going to find, I'm bored sitting here like this, so quiet and still, or you're going to find, when you get that quiet and still, do I feel the suffering of other beings or not? Do I? I mean, I know I do. Every day I see people suffering, and it doesn't have to be huge, terrible, obvious suffering that makes the news. I'm talking about just, I see people suffer every day because, what's that definition of insanity, is to continue doing something even when it doesn't work. I see that every day. I see people, and I'm talking about myself too. You do the same thing over and over and over again every day, and you suffer, and it's like, duh. There's got to be a way out. There's got to be a way of dealing with this or relating to it better than the way I've been doing. And of course, in the world of Zen, we say the answer is to do Zazen, to get so quiet and so still, and to drop off some of that stuff and see what's actually there, and find some sense of true intention. And it's a process, and that's why they call it a practice. It's not going to jump out at you necessarily. It's a subtle thing that comes to you. But what I said earlier was that the more you practice, the more you practice. And the more you see your intention, the more you see your intention. And the two things go together. I'm not so sure having intention without practice is much good. And maybe the same thing can be said about practicing. If you don't have an intention, maybe it's not so good. I don't know. But that's something to ponder on. But the two work together as far as I can tell.
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
Okay, so I have a quote from the best book ever, whatever we read every week. So this is The Heart of the Buddhist Teaching, page 99. It's under right diligence. It says, from outside, it may appear that we are diligent, but not right diligence. The same can be true of our meditation practice. We may appear diligent in our practice, but if it takes us further from reality or from those we love, it is wrong diligence. We practice sitting and walking meditation in ways that cause our body and mind to suffer. Our effort is not right diligence and is not based on right view. But this part really got me. Our practice should be intelligent, based on right understanding of the teaching. It is not because we practice hard that we can say we are practicing right diligence. And I'm taking that the other way of saying, if we are doing things too diligently to, like, for protest, we're losing, I think, the intelligence of our practice. And I think diligence and intention go really well together, but I think they also kind of balance each other out a little bit in that sense.
Well, I've got 3 words to respond to that, and that's Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Because the whole principle of how Zen practice is set up is to maintain a balance, so that you don't practice too intensely, or you don't practice inefficiently, so to speak. And what I mean by Buddha, Dharma, Sangha is that if you practice in those 3 things, your Sangha will help you. Other people will point out that, hey, you're practicing intensely, but are you practicing intelligently? Your teacher, who is sort of comes under that heading of Buddha and teacher, your teacher will correct you. And studying the Dharma, just like you did right there, reading a Dharma an excerpt from a Dharma book. Those three things will help keep you in balance. And over the years, I've become a big believer in that balance between the three things. I think if you practice in a vacuum, so to speak, away from other people, which is hard to do because we live amongst other people, but you can get off track. But those three things, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, and the precepts are all a big part of that too. Those things will be the guardrails that keep you sort of in the correct lane, so to speak.
No, I completely agree. And I think too, I think it was in polishing a tile. It was like your teacher, you need a teacher because the teacher will tell you things you don't want to hear. And that was probably one of the best pieces of advice I think I've ever had. So, yes.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments? Please speak up if you would like to say something.
I think that
Nope, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that when Suzuki had his interaction with John, he was telling him, you're going down there full of turmoil to full of turmoil people. So what do you think you're doing? Look at your intention. He really was saying, look at your intention and look at yourself and say, is that the best thing to do? Of course, he was rather dramatic about it.
Well, in that tradition of what Seido Zen calls the Sawaki Kodo tradition, which is Kosho Uchiyama's background and Uchiyama's, and Tozen Akiyama, who actually helped us start our Charlotte Zen group, came down. They have this phrase, it's almost an opening phrase. I guess if you enter the temple, that might be the first banner you see. Zazen is good for nothing. And Okamura somewhere said that if you advertise that a whole lot, you're not going to have anybody showing up. So you need to, explain that a little better. And then Sawaki Kodo, in a wonderful book called Discovering the True Self, says if you're doing Zazen with the purpose, and we have to be careful with this word intention. It's not a derogatory thing about intention. He said, beware of the karma of the ordinary self. So if you mix, it's easy to get this mix of the karma of our ordinary self, which is our conditioning from all sorts of places, in with our intention. And being raised a Presbyterian, oh my God, that was just a nightmare. Anne's another one, she knows. Because my mommy and daddy wanted me to be good, or God wouldn't have a favor for me. And oh my God, I struggled with that for years and years, but finally I had to kill that God. And DT Suzuki helped me do that. But anyway, so and I'll admit, I started Zen for 10 or 20 or 30 years with this intention of just wanting to escape misery. We all would have moments when we start sitting when things just get very clear, very settled. Oh yeah. This is what I want. Well, then your zazen is not good for nothing. Now you have a plan. You want to get that good feeling again. Well, I struggle with that. Still, I'll sit down. I want to feel good. But now it's finally gotten through here. It has to be good for nothing. Then there's a settling.
I just have a few things to say. Don, thank you very much for your talk this morning, and everybody, Milton, everybody. And remember the middle way. That's all.
Yes.
I think Milton too, he's got this whole good for nothing thing going on. That's his theme for the past couple of months. And I think too, so like, I was going through some turmoil, but two, I just wanted to take a break from Dharma talks and really fully understand this. And I think too, I think the reason I took a break is the reason I sit, and it's because it's kind of all good for nothing. It's a fully functioning circular thing of like, you're gonna just keep suffering unless you can really, like, I guess, understand you're going to be suffering. So, yeah. And I really appreciate you, Milton. I really do. So thank you. And Seido too. This has been a really, really wonderful talk. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, if no one else has anything to say, we're almost at the end of our hour. And we do thank you, Seido, for your help, and for all of you for your comments, especially the reminder of this is the middle way. And now let's give back the merit in the Thich Nhat Hanh call and response. May the merit of this practice
May the merit of this practice
benefit all beings
benefit all beings
and bring peace.
and bring peace.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Seido.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Milton and Seido, I will see you Sunday.
Okay. Thank you for being here for this. I appreciate the support.
Yes, thank you.
You too, Milton. Thank you.